In total, we have 312 units of affordable housing that the Housing Authority either owns or manages. And in the next 3 or 3.5 years, we will have renovated every one of these units, and also adding 8 additional one-bedroom units because there's such a high demand in the market. And that will bring in over $30 million in renovation financing to do that. Our mission is to strengthen opportunity, beginning but not ending with housing. And so what do we mean by this? Besides providing a place to live, we provide supportive services to our residents and community spaces such as this community building that hosts some events like a senior meal program, high school equivalency classes, has Wi-Fi access, a computer lab, a weekly food pantry, and much more. And next year, as part of our renovation efforts, we'll be doubling the size. It'll be a great space for more community members to use. It says so much programming going on. We want to create a flexible space for the community members to have. So the Housing Authority also administers a housing choice voucher program, also called Section 8, and we have a total of 1,284 vouchers that can be used in Monroe County. These vouchers can be used on the private market to help families pay their rents, guaranteeing they pay around 30% of their monthly income on rents, with the Housing Authority making up the rest to the landlord. So in the past year, we've paid out over $9 million in housing assistance payments, not seeing any non-payment of rent issues for these voucher holders at a time when it was a tough year, some job loss, reduction in work hours, and some uncertainty for some of these families. The voucher program is very impactful, and it was a stabilizing force for some of our most vulnerable community members. So that's a little bit about the Housing Authority, but I know that you guys came today to hear some new news. So first of all, I want to announce that the Housing Authority here in Bloomington is one of 700 housing authorities across the country that will get 28 emergency housing vouchers from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Yeah. So these 28 new vouchers are available for individuals and families who are experiencing homelessness, at risk of homelessness, fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence, or who were recently homeless, and providing this kind of rental assistance will kind of reduce that risk of housing instability. So the issuance of these vouchers, it's a partnership. They come from the federal level, but it's a partnership with the Indiana Housing and Community Development Authority and our local Continuum of Care Regional Council, which is the South Central Housing Network, of which there are many partner agencies such as Beacon, New Hope for Families, Middle Way House, Centerstone. And referrals for these vouchers are through the coordinated entry system. And so that coordinated entry process makes the referral to the Housing Authority, and then we would issue the vouchers to the families. For those who might not know, coordinated entry is a system that is used for people who are at risk or experiencing homelessness to access supportive services within homeless service provider agencies, and it gets connected through a centralized assessment process. So unlike regular vouchers, these vouchers are on steroids. They come with funding to support housing search assistance, funding for security deposits, risk mitigation deposits, rental or utility arrears, and assistance with application fees for these families. And these vouchers will be available starting on July 1st. So we're very busy. Very busy working on the specifics and with the various state and community partners on how this program will be successful. Next, the Housing Authority would like to announce we're opening our Housing Choice Voucher waitlist on June 22nd. So we typically do this every year to 18 months, and it's about that time again. So on June 22nd at noon, the wait list will open through our website. It's bhaindiana.net, and those interested Just go online, fill out a basic application that asks for contact information, preliminary household information, and that puts them on the wait list. And we will follow up with them when their name gets closer to the top to complete all the info. Our computer lab, which is inside of this community building, is available for folks who might have access to the internet or a computer. We have staff that are available that can help them apply. And this list remains open for several days. And actually, we're required to give at least a 5-day notice before closing. And more information on this, I have some flyers here at the table, also on our website and Facebook pages. Last, I just want to talk about the voucher program. It's one of the most powerful tools we have in our country and our community to help low-income families find a safe, stable housing opportunity. It's one of the most critical, it's actually probably the most critical partner to us to operate a successful voucher program. So I'm asking local owners, landlords, property owners to consider the benefits of participating in the Housing Choice Voucher Program. Some of those benefits would be timely, guaranteed rent payments from the Housing Authority. We do at least an annual inspection by our in-house Housing Authority inspector. We have a large applicant pool, free advertising, and also landlords have the ability to increase the rent every year. And of course, as a community member, property owners have the opportunity to help voucher holders who are often elderly, disabled, veterans, and families with young children. What we see locally and also across the country is about half of the voucher participants are elderly or disabled and have those young children within their household. They're typically long-term tenants. On average, a voucher client lives in a unit for 7 to 8 years, and there's no documented statistics that voucher participants are any more likely to damage a unit or not pay their rent than non-voucher tenants. So I just ask for local property owners, landlords to consider being an important piece of our community's housing affordability solution, and any interested landlords are welcome to contact our office to learn more. So I'll stick around and answer any questions after this, but of course we have many more announcements. So I'd like to recognize and introduce John Zodi, the Director of the City Housing and Neighborhood Development Department.
Thank you, Amber. And let me say that Amber has become a trusted colleague during my time at this short time at the city, and we'll be sorry to see her leaving in October. And I want to thank her for all her work that she does on behalf of the community here and for the housing effort. And I also want to thank hand staff who are here. We have a few members of the Housing and Neighborhood Development staff here from the city, and want to thank them for coming out today. As we all know, tackling the problem of affordable housing can be difficult, but it's made better by many of the tools and the many partners in this community who are both passionate about the issue and are working to make it better. And that's evident just about every day. Where is he? Or she? The 2020 Housing Committee, Housing Study, in 2020, the City of Bloomington commissioned a housing study that among its findings found that 60% of rental households in Bloomington are cost burdened, which means they're spending more than 30% of their income on housing. To put that another way, almost 2/3 of those renting in Bloomington spend a third of what they make on rent. Home ownership is also relatively expensive here. Nearly a third of owner-occupied households are equally cost burdened. When a rent or mortgage leaves you cost burdened, there's very little in the budget for other important expenses or for saving, which means leaves you especially vulnerable in the case of job loss or unexpected expenses like we've seen a lot of times with the pandemic in the last year or so. The study also pointed out that the population most at risk for being cost burdened and for which there's the biggest lack of affordable housing in our community is those making less than $25,000 per year. And that in order to meet that overall housing demand, over the next 10 years, the study indicates that more than 2,500 units of housing, both market rate and affordable, will need to be developed to meet that demand. Since coming into office in 2016, as all of you well know, and I am learning every day, the Hamilton administration has utilized many different tools to increase accessibility to affordable housing. These include incentives related to workforce housing, creating incentives in the Unified Development Ordinance for affordability, providing tax abatements, and utilizing city resources to help individuals own a home through the city's Down Payment Assistance Shared Appreciation Program, which has been enhanced through the mayor's Recover Forward initiative, where that program was started, and we just awarded our first recently, which I'll talk about in just a minute. We encourage residents of Bloomington to explore these programs. As you may have heard earlier this spring, we saw the first resident take occupancy of a home using these funds through the Shared Appreciation Program, a new homeowner being in a home for long-term affordability period, and helping with that down payment, helping with closing costs, all of that has been a great benefit and a way to get the housing stock into more long-term affordability as time goes on. Earlier this year, we were also happy to announce that Real America, a developer from Indianapolis, had been awarded tax credits through the 9% low-income housing tax credit program, also known as LIHTC, through the state of Indiana. This program has been in the news, will be 64 units of housing, 48 of which are affordable, down on South Walnut Street, and got a tax abatement last week as a further example. And all this is to say, of course, you know we have a major relationship. One of the key functions of the HAN department is our relationship with the Housing and Urban Development Department through the federal government, also known as HUD, through the investment of home dollars and community development block grant money that comes into the agency. And so home funds, as you know, are used to assist in the construction and provision of housing, while community development block grant funds often help residents who seek housing or need housing in another way, by strengthening the service network of the wonderful agencies across this community, some of whom are here today, and those who provide food, shelter, childcare, healthcare, employment training, just as an example. When the COVID-19 pandemic hit, that just cut out? Okay, we're good. The city of Bloomington had responded by awarding more than $250,000 in community development block grant money from the CARES Act last summer. This round came on top of the more than $1 million the city allocated through its regular annual distribution of community development block grant money. I'm pleased to announce today that the city will begin next week an application process for approximately $650,000 in COVID-related CDBG dollars that will be awarded to local agencies to continue Bloomington's ability to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. So something to think about. The money that was awarded last summer, the $250,000 to help respond. Now we're looking at the recovery side, and HUD is very interested in learning how this community is recovering from the pandemic. As final application details become available this week and the first of next, we'd like to hear from local service providers and others about the best use of funds and how they can go farthest in our community to aid that recovery from the pandemic. And coming on the heels of all that money will be approximately $1.6 million that will be utilized specifically for the preservation or production of affordable housing, tenant-based rental assistance, supportive services including homeless prevention services and housing counseling, and the purchase or development of non-congregate shelter. So lots of money coming down the pike. And just to recap what's new today, because I know I mentioned some things that have been previously announced, $650,000 in COVID-related CDBG money, and the $1.6 million that will be allocated to the city later this year. We don't have final guidance on that yet, but we are waiting this fall, and that money will be available to use for those purposes that I mentioned. So with that, I'm glad to turn things over now to Tina Peterson, the president and CEO of both the Bloomington Monroe County Community Foundation and Regional Opportunity Initiatives. Since January, Tina and Efrat Pfefferman with the United Way of Monroe County have been leading the Housing Insecurity Working Group. And so we'll hear updates about that now and welcome them up front. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. A big thank you to the Bloomington Housing Authority for not only hosting us today, but all of the fantastic work that you do day in, day out. And to the City of Bloomington for this opportunity to share a little bit about the work that most of us have been engaged in recent months and many, many others. Housing insecurity and homelessness negatively impact all too many of our community members, as you have heard. We're fortunate to have in our community excellent nonprofit partners, some of whom are here today, local townships, and other local government units attending to the needs that range from emergency shelter, healthcare, food, nutrition, transportation, employment training, rental assistance, rehabilitation services, and many, many more. We have a caring community which genuinely seeks to solve tough problems and is willing to work hard towards improving everyone's quality of life in this community. And with this spirit of creating lasting improvements, the Community Foundation of Bloomington and Monroe County and United Way of Monroe County are working together to facilitate a forum for the needed collaboration and coordination that is necessary for this county to create a sustainable strategy to reduce housing insecurity and prevent homelessness. In recent months, we helped bring together a broad coalition around the table to begin addressing the many components of achieving what some may call functional zero. That's a milestone indicating that a community has measurably ended homelessness for a population and one component of a larger strategy around housing insecurity. We've been working with government bodies, social service providers, philanthropic partners, employers, and the South Central Indiana Housing Network to shape an approach to addressing this issue in our community. We've also been incorporating the voices of people with lived experience to gain a better understanding of how this issue is directly impacting people in our community, listening and learning from all these perspectives.
We've really, building on Efrat's comments, we've really been humbled by that sense of shared responsibility, collaboration, and commitment that's been exhibited by the 50-plus individuals who've been working alongside us over the last 6 months. In addition to participating in broader coalition meetings and engagement, they have been working regularly in subcommittees, regularly meaning often weekly, for the last 2 to 3 months. We've had providers who have been coming together. Is that better? Providers who've been coming together to revisit that original plan we created in 2014 to address housing insecurity that has been called Heading Home. Funders have been coming together to create shared support for not only the process but the long-term solutions. 3 subcommittees in particular have really been focused on some of those things that have been identified as need to know part of the process that will allow us to move forward. These 3 subcommittees have been chaired by many people in this room. Is this a room? Underneath this, I guess, shelter. And they have focused on some things that I think we're going to find incredibly helpful in defining a path forward as we think about housing insecurity. First of all, we've had a committee, data and dashboarding. That community has reviewed the current data collection landscape to identify the data that service providers are collecting currently. I don't know what I'm doing. And which data points are most significant to measuring the progress on addressing housing insecurity and homelessness. To address our housing insecurity challenges, we must be able to both understand them and quantify them. These data points focus on measuring progress, capacity, usage, and need, trying to make it really focused on not just sheltering, but also long-term security and housing. In addition, the committee found barriers to data collection and reporting that will need to be further addressed by combining various data platforms in our community and seeking outside expertise. The MAP and GAP Committee reviewed services associated with proximal causes of housing insecurity and identified gaps in these services and in housing. They included services, as Efrat mentioned, including childcare, employment income, legal, health, transportation, and more. They are all part of the big picture of housing security. The group identified gaps in these services and barriers we must face, and many people face, in trying to access them. The committee discovered a significant barrier in inventory current housing resources in our region, and they found there is no centralized list of affordable housing units. This is an issue that needs to be addressed to better understand our capacity for housing in this region. The Promising Practices Committee was the most fun. The committee identified holistic best practices in obtaining housing security in other communities. This included reviewing infrastructure of other communities and the tools they use to reach their goals. Although we are not capable or even desire to implement all or every practice we found in these successful communities, they serve as a starting point to adapting tools to our community's needs. The first step we have taken in this initiative aligns with many successful communities, bringing together a broad coalition around the table to address this issue. Another commonality we found in communities that were successful is the use of a housing first approach. Educating ourselves in the community on this strategy will be important in guiding how we tackle housing insecurity going forward.
So let's talk next steps. Our next steps in this process will include incorporating the committee's findings into an updated community plan for addressing housing insecurity. We're convening the group of providers and advocates in the coming weeks to update the plan and inform the work moving forward. We'll also be looking at what we have learned to date as we strive to create a shared strategy for moving forward and identifying a sustainable infrastructure that supports this work for the long term. The task ahead is not an easy one, and as a community, we will all need to come together to make the necessary shifts and to do the hard work. We're grateful for all the partners and volunteers who've invested time, effort, and resources as we begin this process and look to the future. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share this with you today, and thank you to the city and the Bloomington Housing Authority once again.
I think I'm next. Mayor Hamilton, good to be with you. I was at an event last week where the speaker had somebody helping him holding an umbrella over them. I'm kind of thinking maybe we need like a cicada protector or something. It's a little, the audience sees all the cicadas flying around, but they don't bite, so that's good. I really am glad to be with you. Tina and Efrat, thank you so much for your work and all that you're doing, helping align resources. The Housing Insecurity Working Group responded to some key issues, but has obviously put your eyes on the long haul and helped us think kind of the long haul responses. I'm on behalf of all Bloomingtonians, I thank you and all your partners and collaborators who've been part of that. I actually am extremely encouraged and hopeful about learning about your progress and thinking about what comes next. So thanks for that. You heard numerous staff I know from the city have helped respond to affordable housing. You heard from two of them today. We are incredibly grateful for the strong leadership of Amber Scobie and your colleagues at the Bloomington Housing Authority. It is one of the least appreciated in many ways, this incredible institution that helps thousands of people live safe, decent lives and sleep every night in safety and decent conditions. And we really are proud of what you do. Really good to learn about the new steps you announced today. We also appreciate the work of the Housing and Neighborhood Development Department led by John Zodi and recently retired but never forgotten Dora Sims too, who led that department, and all of your colleagues. And thank you again for announcing the support that's so important to help us claw out of this crisis. And I will just give one shout out, another to come, to the Biden administration and Congress as well for supporting these efforts. Now, well before this pandemic, we've been involved and faced an affordable housing crisis in Bloomington, you know that, and around the country. The pandemic made these issues even tougher. It made disproportionate negative effect on many of our most vulnerable neighbors, with job losses, with child care difficulties, social services that were stretched thin. And for those who live paycheck to paycheck, these kind of impacts can compound and create worsening housing insecurity. So as the pandemic was worsening and the economic downturn worsening last year, we had to act fast, and I convened a group of local philanthropic leaders, including the two you just heard from and others, to lead a social services working group last spring assessing the community's needs, emergency needs for food, shelter, and childcare, and directing millions in aid. In that effort, I also want to note and thank Beverly Callender Anderson, Director of the Community and Family Resources Department, who did tremendous work as the city's liaison over the last year. Hasn't slept, I don't think, maybe a little, and helping align and coordinate with that group, the shelter and service providers, those helping so many people face and confront and address these challenges. Just one example, the isolation shelter that was stood up with this collaboration helped 270 or more individual people who had to isolate, quarantine in the face of COVID, who didn't have other options. That's just one example of the great work together. There are other city folks here too. I know, raise your hand. We've got new Deputy Mayor Don Griffin. We've got Adam Wason, Public Works, Alex Crowley, Economic Sustainable Development, and their colleagues. We have Office of the Mayor folks and others here. Am I missing a department head? I hope not. Thank you all for all that you do. So, when the pandemic and economic recession stuck with us through the summer, last summer, we in my administration announced the Recover Forward that you've heard referenced, which is a multi-phase plan to help us emerge from the crisis and build our community back better with greater racial, economic, and climate equality. With the City Council's support last year, we implemented this wide-ranging $8 million plan using city reserves and reversions to help build back better, to protect the safety net, support job growth, improve transportation, accessibility, energy efficiency, local food economy, helping struggling homebuyers and renters. All of this done with an overlay of focusing on sustainability and inclusion. There have been lots of impacts of that. I don't have time to go through them. John Zodi mentioned just one, that homeowner who in that new program has purchased a house that will be affordable to her and to subsequent generations. Recover Forward is our city's way of stimulating growth in the depths of a downturn, being a counter-cyclical force. All this builds on the work that's already been going on, over 900 units of affordable housing in places like Switchyard Apartments and Crawford 2 and Kinzer Flats and Union at Crescent, Southern Knoll, Beeline Heights, Retreat at Switchyard, and more. We've used other mechanisms too, as you've heard some reference today, the new Unified Development Ordinance, zoning decisions itself, housing support for police officers living in the city, new abatement approaches, even acquiring land directly to help advance affordability, like around Switchyard Park, the current hospital site, 17th Street, Trinitas, and others. But even with all that, we know challenges are in front of us every day, and they are facing many of our neighbors every day. We need more progress, more help. We live in Indiana's most expensive housing market, but everyone deserves a home. We are very glad to see that, like Bloomington did last year with City Council, President Biden and Congress have proposed the strongly counter-cyclical American Rescue Plan Act, known affectionately as ARPA. They get a little bigger bang from the federal government. So with the $22 million that Bloomington is receiving directly through ARPA can be transformative for this community. It's worth noting as well that our county is receiving nearly $29 million. And where the recent crisis has compounded the challenges and struggles, this over $50 million one-time investment for our community is a unique chance to pursue big opportunities. So you've heard plenty of announcements today. This is an announcement-rich time, and I want to just join with those that were already made to announce certain plans with regard to the city's share of ARPA. Today, I'm announcing my intent to ask the City Council to dedicate a substantial portion of our ARPA allocation, multi-millions of dollars, to new one-time investments in housing in at least 3 categories. First, as a response to and prevention of homelessness, focusing on the Housing First model, the wraparound services, the permanent housing focus you heard so much from Tina and Efrat about, and the work of our community. First. Second, affordable housing rental supports to help those who struggle so often to juggle rent, transportation, healthcare, job needs, family needs, and others, food, security, and so much. And third, affordable home ownership supports to help the families who struggle to build stability and wealth that come over time in the special ways that home ownership can offer. I'm going to ask the council to view all of these potential investments through two lenses: sustainability and inclusion. How can they help us meet our climate responsibilities and be the sustainable city and families that we want to be? And how can they enhance diversity and equity in our community, assuring that everyone belongs and knows they belong in this community? These proposed new investments will build on those we've made already through Recover Forward, and at the same time will consider new ideas and new collaborations, some of which were discussed today. For example, we may look to use these funds to expand voucher programs, or support a community land trust, or create a landlord risk mitigation fund, or other ways to increase access for more people and reduce housing insecurity. These ARPA one-time funds are expected to be invested over a 24 to 34-month period, starting in July. And beginning in July, we will be presenting proposals to invest yet this year during 2021. And you also then will see in the annual city budget process, which kind of runs August to October, proposals for calendar year 2022. You may notice I did not specify exact dollar amounts today. Media nods. You didn't say exact. Multi-million dollars I talked about. All of this ARPA opportunity needs to balance with other needs. We look forward to hearing more suggestions for specific ideas, more public input. We look forward to continuing to partner with our community's housing sector and social service agencies who bring their expertise to these challenges. We look forward to partnering with the county to leverage our respective allocations further together. The pandemic and its wider fallout have been a rare calamity. Thankfully, not seen in a century. But because of extraordinary opportunities like ARPA, we are in a position to take unique actions together, addressing housing insecurity in unprecedented ways as a community. Everyone deserves a home. Now is a time that we can use our imagination, our compassion, our creativity, and our collaboration to make some really big things happen in the coming months and years. I want to thank you all for joining us today, and if there are any questions, I'm happy to steer them towards somebody who can answer them for you. Thank you all very much. We have a lot to do.